Before we get started with today's podcast, we'd like to ask returning listeners to leave us a rating or review on your favorite podcast platform, iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And if you really enjoy it, share a link to this podcast with friends or family who would enjoy hearing our weekly discussions about basketball and basketball culture. Now, on to the show.
Jim, isn't it amazing when Michigan can keep this game to a 19-foot, 9-inch game inside that three-point line? It's all theirs. Nice move by Steve Fisher here.
Hello and welcome to the 19-9 podcast. On today's episode, we're talking to Jesse Washington, writer for ESPN's Undefeated, co-author of John Thompson's autobiography, I Came as a Shadow. We're going to get Jesse's thoughts on working with the legendary coach and talk about this amazing autobiography. Before his time at ESPN, he covered race for the Associated Press, co-founded the basketball magazine Bounce. We got to get to that later too. Jesse's also won a National Journalism Award from the Asian American Journalists Association, Journalist of the Year Award from the Philadelphia Association of Black Journalists, 2 feature awards from the National Association of Black Journalists, and a 2019 Associated Press Sports Editors Top 10 Award for column writing. He's married with 4 children, a member of the Baha'i, is that how you say that? Baha'i faith?
Yes, it is. Yep.
And this is my favorite part, and we're going to start out here. You can find him giving folks the business on the basketball court near you. So I love that little addition to your bio. So you got to tell the story as we're kicking this off. You played at Yale, so you have some hoop game. And what happened with that YouTube video where you're giving this guy the business? I'll put a link in the show notes, but you're giving this guy the business who was talking trash.
Yeah, man. Okay, so let me start with you left out one award. I was like the second most improved player in fifth grade junior varsity. Okay, so let's not forget that. And at Yale, let's put some quote marks around played because I watched my teammates play.
Hey, I saw you on Basketball Reference.
Got no burn. Yeah, you saw my 2 points.
Yeah, that's right.
2 points in my career. And so, but you know, man, like I love the game. And I've always played, and you know how dudes be nowadays the trend is to reclassify kids, and so they're old when they get to college. I did it the other way. I skipped a grade. So when I showed up at Yale, I was like I had just turned 17. I was little and scrawny. I had no game, but I love to play, and I've kept playing, and I've held on to a little bit of what I got, maybe longer than most people. So I did an article about James Harden flopping, man, at all the floppery down in Houston. And I knew that when this went on social media, everybody would be like, who are you to criticize James Harden's game? You can't play. So everybody who talked smack at me, I was just like, come play me and find out how whack I am. And one guy he said, okay, let's go. And I had no idea. He could have been nice. But he was an Army guy, an airman in the Air Force. And when I showed up, all the hoopers know. You could see a guy take one shot, and you could know if he has game or not. I walked in the gym. I got a little frame on me, you know what I'm saying? I'm like 6'4", maybe 6'5" on a good day. I could walk the walk. I look like a hooper. I walked in, and everyone was like, oh, those are people around. And then I looked down at the guy. He took one shot, and I was like, it is over. He has no chance.
Oh, God.
And he did it, and that's what happened. He had no chance. Look it up on the internet. JesseWashington.com.
Oh my gosh, it was great, and so I told John before we got on. So Josh does this thing on YouTube, the owner of 19-9, called Cold Threes, and so he thinks he's real tough because you walk on, no warm up, shoot three. He thinks he's really good. So we're gonna throw the challenge out there so you can take him down in the future. I think you got him.
That's a tough one, though. That's a talent.
It is.
That's a talent, man. That's a skill. You got to work at that. I do.
He's
like
a shooter.
Yeah. Okay. That's you, John? You the shooter?
No. The other guy.
Owner of 99. Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right. So I'll play him for 5 hoodies and some shorts.
That's right.
Got it.
Again, when I go down to the Y, I done beat everybody at my local YMCA, so I need to find a challenge. So I'll just roll up, and kids will be out there sweaty, and I'll be like, all right, let's play some shooting games. I got no warm-up, and then we'll do it that way. Cold threes it is. All right,
Cold threes, you're it.
Yeah.
All right, so I listened to the audio version. I got about an hour drive from work, and you are reading this, right? That's you on there. So you do an awesome job. So just representing someone in words and making it come to life. And some people make me feel bad for listening to books instead of reading them. But I heard Malcolm Gladwell talk about that we've been listening to stories for a lot longer than we've been reading them. And it actually accesses just this different part of your brain. And so I've really taken hold of just listening to books and just enjoyed the audio version of it. So tell me about the process of creating the audiobook and just getting started with this book in general.
Man, it goes back to the fact that when COVID hit, Coach and I were still finishing the book and we couldn't meet in person. So we did a lot of work on the phone. It goes back before that. Coach was known for calling people up in the middle of the night. Hey, boy, you sleeping? But he never did that to me. He was very respectful of my time to the utmost. And so when COVID hit and I could tell he was a little anxious, I said, Coach, whatever you need, I got you. You want to call me in the middle of the night? You want to stay on the phone? I got you. I'm here for you. Whatever you need. And he said, you're going to regret that. And I didn't regret it, but we would spend hours and hours on the phone, 6-7 days a week going over the book. And a lot of it was me reading it to him and me making corrections. And so then, it's funny, I tweeted this out today. One day out of the blue, he was just like, Jesse, I want you to read the audiobook because you understand the feeling behind it. So imagine I'm over here at my house reading Coach's book to him in his voice. I'm identifying with this man. I'm really feeling it. I spent 2 years writing this book for him, so I felt it deeply. So I was very appreciative of the opportunity to read his audiobook, and so we recorded it right in this room that you're sitting here. Macmillan Audio has a tremendous team of producers. I really have to give a shout out to not only Sal, the producer, but the director. Her name is Alicia, and I'm going to mess her last name up. She's an English woman. I didn't know that there was a director for audiobooks, and she read the whole book. She really got it, and she would coach me to really put certain inflections and emphases on things. So thank you for that. I'm glad that you guys appreciate it.
Yeah.
Jesse, follow-up question about that. So as you're recording the book, you have in one part of your head, right, you have the director's notes, guiding you as to how to read an audiobook. But I assume probably in the other part of your head, right, you have Coach's voice telling you, retelling you these stories. So when you were reading the audiobook, what were maybe parts of the book or themes of the book that you really felt yourself, wanting to communicate or convey to readers who were accessing the book in this way?
Yeah, thank you for asking that. I did have the opportunity to go to Coach's funeral, and they passed out these little cards with it had his picture on it. And so I would put that picture on the desk next to the microphone. So he was looking at me, and I felt like he was saying, "All right, boy, you do me right here."
Yeah, that's right.
Don't be messing around.
He might have said something else.
Yeah, he definitely said something else. Don't be messing around with my book. So really, it was when he was talking to me about this, he felt it so deeply. These were the things that was the most important to him, to get his message across. And he was a great communicator, and so I couldn't talk like him. That's not the point of it, or imitate his voice, but I just really wanted to feel it because he felt it so deeply. When he was talking about having to grow up with segregation in the Catholic Church, when he was talking about bringing his team onto a Big East arena and an away game and people throwing racist taunts at his players and throwing bananas on the court, or when they went out for the national championship against Villanova, somebody throwing a banana on the court, and so when he would talk about these things, he felt it so deeply. I just wanted to feel it. And I felt like if I could convey his emotion and the depth and the intensity of his emotion, then it would be successful.
I think the words too, you might not have got his voice because he's got that big bass, but you got the cadence of it. I really felt even reading the words, you could tell you guys had spent a lot of time together. It was written almost like I've heard him talk, I've heard his voice so much that you kind of have it in your head. So if you didn't do it right, you would feel that as well. And I definitely didn't get that.
That was so important to me to make sure it sounded like him. I've read a lot of autobiographies and by a lot of great writers. And sometimes the writer is so great that they get stuck on their own thing and they want to do their thing. This is Coach's book. And so I had to make sure that it sounded like him, not like me. And the fact that people like you and others say that it sounds like him is very important. Thank you.
So tell me about, to help it sound like him, though, you have to first gain his trust. And in the book, you write about how he's notoriously not trusting of the media. So how did you earn that trust, or what was the process like just getting to know him?
Yeah, well, I earned it with performance because it was very clear implicitly and explicitly that if I didn't muster up, he would find somebody else. It was written out in our contract that at any point he could take his book and go home, And then also one time, I
knew those contracts from the Nike days, right? You knew how to do it right.
This is a contract negotiated by David Falk. Okay.
Okay.
So,
also knows a contract. Yeah.
Man. So, but one time, we recorded all the sessions and I saved everything. And I really feel that those recordings down the line made really people, they might be valuable to some folks, certainly to his family. So one day I said, we were maybe the process took 2 years, we may be 6 months into it. I said, Coach, I got all these recordings. I want to make sure you and your family have them. Would you like me to give them to you all at the end? Or would you like me to give them to you as we go along? And he thought for me, he said, hey, give them to me as we go along. Cause you never know when I might have to get rid of you. And he was joking, but he wasn't,
Yeah.
So I gained his trust by working hard, number one. I did a lot of research to prepare for every session with him. I didn't just pop in and be like, hey, Coach, what you want to talk about now? I would look stuff up. I would ask him about things that happened. We had voluminous news clippings to go through of all of these games. I read books. I watched games, watched TV shows, watched documentaries. And he said, hey, man, you're not lazy. I think one thing that I did to gain his trust was I found this letter that had been written in the Georgetown student newspaper that was basically calling his team a bunch of dumb you-know-whats.
Mm-hmm.
They were criticized. It was his second season, and they were criticizing his team for a lack of mental ability. Mm-hmm. And it really explained so much of what he had to deal with. And he was blown away by this letter. And he kept saying, man, I can't believe you found that. Like, you're not lazy. Mm-hmm. So that helped gain his trust. And then the writing was good. And other people said the writing was good. Yeah. So once we got to that point, by the time we got to the end of working on the book, he would talk about something. He'd say, you know how to hook it up, Jess. Just go ahead and hook it up.
Yeah, that's right.
I like too you said that. And one of the things I've even picked up on myself doing is watching for, I love reading a good book because you watch for things that you might do too. So when I'm, talking, or even now, because, obviously I'm talking a lot of basketball, is watching for those, like using the wrong code words. Cause it is weird how it just gets ingrained in you. It's just it's part of culture. And you think about how you refer to a team. And I go the other way. I want to do the opposite then. If I hear someone saying, just athletic or tough, I want to say, no, I'm going to use the other one because that's really what they are. I've been looking to point that out to, you read in, we look through the media guides and you look through and some of the things that these guys accomplished, during the year. Like I was looking at Charlie Ward today because we've got Florida State coming up this weekend and he's president of the student body. And I love pointing that stuff out and love that coach really called that out too, where he felt that part, the well-rounded athlete, and he put so much time and effort into just helping these guys become all that they could be, whether that was an NBA player or whatever they would go on to. And you can see that from the guys that graduated.
That's terrific, man. And big up to you for looking to highlight other things. It might have been coach who told me this or somebody else, but there a lot of times where you could tell the race of the player just by the words that are used to describe him without even seeing it. Like if you listen to it on radio, oh, he plays so smart. He's so tough, or he's so athletic, and these are ingrained things that coach was always thinking about, on many levels at the same time, about the words that he used and others would use. There's one thing that he persistently had to correct me about for the first several months that we worked together. And I would say, yeah, coach, but white people would do this. And he'd be like, no, Jesse, some white people. Yeah. Some white people. Whenever in the book it would say, and then white people said, no, Jesse, it's some white people. So that's one example of how careful he was with his work.
Yeah, just thought out.
Yeah, Jesse, one of the things that Coach would talk about in building relationships with white individuals is he would say if a white individual earned the coach's trust, he would talk about how the race became invisible to him. And
he said they would become colorless.
Colorless, thank you very much. Yeah, and I wonder, it seems to me that there's this real time for this book? Like it seems like considering the protests over the summer and a lot of the conversations about race relations in the U.S., it seems like this book provides like a lot of insight, and especially his kind of thoughts and considerations about connecting with white individuals, studying the white man. I guess I wondered, as you've seen a lot of commentary about the book, how has it been received, considering the current context? And especially it seemed like when you were finishing the book with Coach, these were some of the, I don't know, I guess the backdrop for, the finishing process for the text itself.
Yeah. So I think it's really struck a deep nerve with a lot of people in a good way. It's really resonating. And he's a very atypical person. And he had this reputation of being a racist. And yet he had so many meaningful relationships with white people. Some of his greatest mentors, the assistant who stayed with him the longest, Mary Fenlon, Red Auerbach, Dean Smith. He said, I've never sought the approval of anyone, but Dean Smith is the only coach I would ever be an assistant for, who I could take these criticisms from. So number one, just by that example, I think it's amazing. And if John Thompson, the big, black, proud, unshut-upable, always speaks his mind. There is no blacker person in American sports or perhaps history than John Thompson. If he had these types of relationships with white people, Frank Rienzo, Jack DeGioia, the president of the university, and on and on and on, then, well, the rest of us definitely can too. And you're not compromising yourself. He was very clear. Shout to Emmanuel Reed, who's one of the folks who works in the program at Georgetown. And he put us up on something specific with the second line of the book, I believe, either the first or the second is, my father always told me to study the white man. And this young brother who works at Georgetown basketball office was like, is that like trying to ingratiate yourself? And coach was able to be very specific. No, it's not saying, kiss their behind or try to get in good with them. Understand how that world works. Understand how they do things. Now, things are a lot more integrated now than they were in the 1940s and 50s when Coach grew up. But his way of relating to white people, of immersing himself in it and understanding how it all worked, and then excelling, in an uncompromising fashion, and always being him. He says over and over in his book, I will always love Georgetown because they never tried to stop me from being me. So I've had a number of white coaches, white readers, and others just other white folks reach out to me, find me on the internet and just be like, wow, I'm really blown away by this. I didn't know this side of him.
Yeah.
I'm affected by this. And I think that a lot of black folks can get something out of it too. This is a very divisive time.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. And, the black community is not monolithic, and there are many different views about, working with and accepting our white brothers and sisters. And so Coach's example, I think, is the best that I've seen, and I hope a lot of people emulate it.
Yeah, absolutely. I felt like he is such a complex, or like I guess like maybe like in-depth lens for talking and connecting with people. You could really see it in the writing and in the narration about, and he would talk about how he didn't have to agree with individuals to respect them. And I think that, in today's society, right, like we want to be dichotomous, right? Yes, no, enemy, friend, these sorts of things. But, I think that he really kind of paints how you could disagree, and especially somebody who, didn't have back down in him at all, but still be able to connect with them, afterwards or after the game, these sorts of things.
I thought that was amazing, and I believe in that philosophy, and very few people today do, and what you're referring to specifically, and I will give a little spoiler. Coach Thompson, after he was coaching, had a radio show, and one day he said Clarence Thomas called him up, and they talked for half an hour off the air, and I was like, Coach, Clarence Thomas? I sort of just threw that out there and see where you go. He's like, yeah, Clarence Thomas. I was like, yeah, Coach, a lot of, and he really taught me how to be careful not to indict people off the rip, And so I carefully worded it and said, yeah, Coach, a lot of black people would feel that Clarence Thomas has done a lot of things that have hurt black folks. And he said, I don't have to agree with somebody to respect them. Now, a lot of people would say, no, I don't respect Clarence Thomas,
Yeah.
you know, especially in this uber polarized era. So the fact that he said that and lived by that, I thought was awesome.
Yeah, you've got this great part in the book too, where he meets with Rayful and as a part of the Alonzo Mourning thing, and sort of the same situation there. Just the cojones on him to understand that he had to do something, but then I don't even know. Like, I guess it's just the internal belief that he had in himself to sort of navigate that whole situation. I don't know. Like, what was his recollection years on about, I was curious as an older man if he was like, I can't believe I did that, or if he was just like still had that like self-assuredness when talking about that.
The best way to describe it, Coach really had this sort of, a rather humble demeanor. He never made a big deal out of the things that he did. And earlier on, I'd be like, Coach, it was so amazing. You did this, you did that. He'd be like, yeah, well, you know, it happened. And then he would go on. So that didn't work with him. The whole thing with Rayful, though, he knew in the course of, the years that I was doing this book, Rayful Edmond, the DC drug kingpin who was meeting with Coach's players, and then Coach called him in for a meeting. That was the number one thing everybody asked me about. And in the black community, I'm from New York, and I knew who Rayful was when I was growing up. I wasn't even from DC. Jeez. I mean, this guy was an absolute legend, and not for good reasons. And, Coach, I don't think that, he wasn't amazed that he had did it. He still wasn't scared. And as he describes in the book, he said it over and over. Well, this is how I grew up. These are the people who molded me, so I reacted instinctively. And he didn't really dwell on it. He actually said I should have been more scared than I was.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
no doubt.
It is such a profound moment in his legacy that it wasn't an atmosphere of threat or coercion or anger. It was mutual respect.
Yeah.
And to your point, John, about what you said, you don't have to agree with someone to respect him. He didn't condone drug dealing, but he said, hey, this is a kid from my city. He could be one of my neighbor's children. Yeah. So am I going to shun him? No, I'm going to try to talk to him. I'm going to treat him like a human being. And the way he was able to do that is amazing. That Rayful chapter is really one of the most powerful points of the book.
So good. Yeah. So I wanted to skip back a little bit and talk about the rabbit, because we have a big theme when we started this podcast, actually talking about playground basketball. And I had Ali on, who wrote The Boys of Dunbar, which I'll link to.
Oh, my man.
Yeah. Yes.
Shout out to Ali. Yes. Absolutely.
So we talked to him about his book, The Boys of Dunbar, and I'll link that podcast too. But he says that I needed to ask you about Bounce Magazine. I know that's in your bio, but he said specifically with Babito Garcia on chronicling the New York City and playground basketball culture. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that, and then we can talk about John Thompson's time, what playground basketball meant to him too.
Oh man. Okay, so let's just start here. Playground basketball, man. Like, okay, I'm 51 years old. And yes, I will still give you buckets. Like, if you're okay.
This is good because I'm 41, so I'm hoping that I'm saying that same thing when I'm 51.
All right. So Aaron, did you play any college basketball?
I went to IU and was not good enough to play there, but I still play. I shirts and skins on Wednesdays. I still play.
How tall are you?
6 feet. So
then I'm killing you. Okay. So that's my attitude.
Challenge accepted.
That's my attitude. I'm killing you.
I love it.
Yeah. And so it's a playground attitude, man.
Yeah.
Like, that's how we grew up playing. I think that these kids now, like, they're too much the ballers. It's too organized. Too much is given to them. I'm going to sign you up, and you're going to get to play. And if you don't get enough playing time on this team, I'm going to go put you on another team. I'm going to play into the coach. Man, go out to the playground and wait all day for next when you're 12. Yes. And then get to play in the last game before, And
or know if you lose that you will not get back on.
You will not get back on. You won't. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so Bounce Magazine was a New York City playground basketball magazine. And it was started by myself, Babito Garcia, and Sean Couch. And we're playground basketball players. And we started it really it's for players. is for people who play basketball. And, it started, it was a little magazine about as big as my phone. It was held together with like chewing gum and Elmer's. And we just ranked the top playground basketball tournaments in New York City. I mean, a lot of people don't know that there's like 50, 75, men's leagues in New York City in any given summer. So it really caught on, and people just felt the authenticity of it. Bob and I played together for years in New York. Bob put me onto many tournaments and things like that. And then Bob is a historian among the many other things that he is. Sean Couch's dad, Mr. Jim Couch, has been bringing people up through Dykeman. He's the original Dykeman, and Sean grew up in Dykeman, played at Columbia, played for the Knicks. So just really was an authentic magazine for basketball players by basketball players. And it just happened to pop off when And One was getting hot. So Playground was nice. So we had a lot of stuff like that. We had a lot of cats on the cover of that magazine on the coming up, through the playground basketball world in New York, who became big time. We had Kyrie on the cover. We had Lance Stevenson on the cover when he was in the 8th grade. Lance Stevenson was in the 8th grade, going into the 9th, playing in men's league in New York City and bussing pros, bussing them.
That dude was legit.
This. Yeah, we had Kemba Walker on the cover. Kemba Walker's nickname was Easy Pass.
Oh,
okay, because that's how he was going through cats as a high schooler.
Yeah. When
we did the cover shoot with Lance Stevenson, he was in the 8th grade. I went out to Coney Island where they shot He Got Game and everything. And I'm 30. I'm sort of in my prime. Yep. Me and Lance are the same size. Lance was a little stiff and didn't want to do this for the photo. So I was like, Lance, why don't we play one-on-one so you could get loose and get some dunks for the camera? Really, I wanted to measure up. Mm-hmm. And in my mind, I'm like, this kid is 14 years old. I'm a grown man. I'm 30. We both 6'4", 6'5", about 200. Lance was probably about 180. How bad can this kid really beat me? Mm-hmm. He could really beat me. No murder. It was like 15-5, 15-6 maybe. And then I know in his mind, he was like, who is this guy? Like, I beat tons of guys. He was so tenacious.
Crazy.
It wasn't that he was necessarily that much. He was so tenacious, and in his mind, he was like, "There's no way this dude could beat me," and I couldn't. Yeah. So Bounce Magazine, man, we had a good run with it, and it was a lot of fun. It was like the purest expression of basketball in the written form that I think has come along in a long time.
That's awesome. I looked up some of the old stuff online, fun to read through. So
it's hard to find.
It is hard to find. I'm like, you need to start putting an archive together. Get with the Slam guys and start putting stuff up.
Digitize it, man. Yeah. One day we do need to digitize it, man. But I got what do we got over here? Boom! Like this was my man Bob with the
Yes, that's the one I had.
That's awesome.
The Puerto Rico issue, all Puerto Rican hoopers.
That's the one. That's what I saw online. I loved it.
Yeah, man, we got a lot of legends on here. So, but sometimes, the mystique can be greater if it's not easily accessible. No doubt. Shout to Bob, shout to Sean Couch, shout to my man Justin Leonard. That was the crew that did Bounce Magazine. It was literally hand to hand. We were passing it out in the playgrounds. It was a tremendous experience. I loved it.
I love it.
Two follow-up questions. When Lance beat you, did he give you the air guitar at all?
No, but I got a story. Wait, I got a story. Fast forward. Man.
Was he blowing in your ear?
So, man Bobito. Like my brother Bob, I love this man. He is so authentic, and he started a basketball tournament called Full Court 21. So maybe 12 years ago, I'm coming through New York. I hit Bob up, yo, can we get a run in? Yeah, come over to the Y and 21st Street and whatever. And it was me, Bob, and his dude named Roman Hooper. And he was like, let's play 21, but let's play full court 21. I was like, what is that? Every change of possession, you got to score on the other end.
Oh, my gosh.
I was like, wow, let's go. And then if you hit, so you score a bucket, then you shoot from the top of the key. And if you make 3, you get the ball back. Yeah. You got to go the other way.
Oh, wow.
What? Yo, great workout. So Bob starts a tournament, Full Court 21, and this is what it's about. He started in New York. Whoever wants to show up that day, we're going to play Full Court 21. There's a maximum of 6 people on the court. You might have 3 or 4 of those 6 people games. Whoever wins those individuals, you play one more game of Full Court 21. Bob started having this tournament all over the world. Barcelona, Milan, Tokyo, Costa Rica, Cuba, Puerto Rico, and 5 or 6 times in New York. And the winner of every single day of Full Court 21, hella people in Canada too. Toronto, Montreal, they were good up there. Whoever won at the end of the summer came to New York City and got to play for the all-world Full Court 21 championship. So your boy won 3 times in Philly, and then I couldn't make Philly one year, so I drove up to Montreal, shout to Will Strickland, took their money. So the last summer before the pandemic, I know this is a long story.
No, you're great, man. I love
last
it.
summer before the pandemic, I am the 4-time qualifier for the All-World Championship. I am 50 years old, yes. 50. The All-World Championship, we got people literally from around the world. It's fantastic. My man Bob has sponsors. He had Converse as a sponsor. We got all the shoes and everything, the shirts and the shorts with the logos. It was hot. And I'm 50. And I just happen to have a really good game. The park is packed. It's at Goat Park in New York City, a.k.a. Rocksteady Park. And Bob got celebrities at the game, including Lance Stephenson. Oh, no. So I'm in my bag today, yo. I'm in my bag. I'm giving people the business. I threw it through this dude's legs, splash, and the crowd is rooting for me because I'm 50 years old.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
There's this other cat, Matt Thomas, who G League player.
Okay.
We get in and there's no out of bounds in Full Court 21. Nah. So the ball goes to the sideline, we fall on the ground, I come up, boom, splash. Crowd goes absolutely nuts. And Bob is on the mic and he goes, yo, Jess, give him the guitar. And I look at Lance and go,
yes.
Lance has his phone out. So Lance's Instagram, doing Lance's
yes.
dance.
Oh my God. I gotta find that.
So yeah. I scored 2 points in college.
What's up now? 4-time champion. That's right.
I thought you were going to say Lance was going to come out of the crowd and take you out again.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, Lance is tough, man.
I know.
Lance was one of my favorite players, man. When he was in the league, period, he was just so entertaining.
I love that.
Didn't care, man.
No,
you never knew what was going to happen.
Exactly. Yeah. So let's bring it back to the book, and the rabbit, who is Elgin Baylor, also represents something from the playground. It's this mythology that builds up around guys on the playground, and nicknames too. I'm really on this nickname trend. You said that Kemba Walker, Easy Pass. It seems like that's where a lot of the nicknames came up.
So, are the nicknames? Are we losing the nicknames?
I think we'll
come back to this. I want to go down the rabbit hole. There's no real great nicknames anymore.
I know. I'm mad. I'm legit mad about it. This is a stoop that I'm gonna die on. I want those to come back. We need a foundation for better nicknames because again,
where nicknames were handed out.
Playground, right?
The playground. That's where they started calling him the rabbit. Yeah. No, so John Thompson grew up playing on the playgrounds and had a love and a reverence for it. And I really latched on to that part of the book where he, this man, Elgin Baylor's legend grew on the playground. And he said there were literally when word would go out, and Coach Thompson was like, mind you, we didn't have no internet, it was just word of mouth. Oh, the Rabbit's going to play Wilt Chamberlain. And 2,000 people would come. And he was like, Jesse, he emphasized, he was like, I am not exaggerating at all. There were easily 2,000 people at a playground basketball game. So the legend, would grow, and people claim that they're, exaggerated, and sometimes they get, a little exaggerated. But obviously, Elgin Baylor proved that he was every bit of what they said he was when he got to the NBA. This is the man who invented hang time. Yeah. He was Jordan before Jordan. Coach Thompson said he could change directions in midair. It was unbelievable. So playground basketball in Washington, which is one of the greatest basketball cities in the country. Playground basketball in Washington meant so much to Coach Thompson, and just the city of Washington and Washington basketball meant so much to him. So many great players coming out of there to this day. But one of the things that he is most proud of in his life was that he won championships in high school, college, the NBA, and NCAA championship with Georgetown, and a gold medal at the Olympics. So, and he said very few people from Washington can say that they did that, which he's very proud of.
Yeah, Jesse, throughout the book, Coach Thompson really talks about, kind of the lore of playground basketball and how much, like how much that built his understanding of basketball and then this dynamic of celebrity. But then he also talked about how many great playground basketball players never got a chance to play in college or possibly the pros. Now, fast forward to your magazine, Bounce Magazine, which is kind of like archiving almost like this verbal lore of playground basketball. And then fast forward to today, I don't know. Well, I guess I want to ask you, what's your sense of the playground basketball scene now with social media? Is it being enhanced because there's, video evidence and people are passing that around? Or is it kind of getting lost, kind of getting paved over? And I think that's kind of a critique of, the younger people these days.
Yeah, there's a lot going on there. So number one, shout to my man Bone Collector. I did an article about Bone Collector for Bounce. He was one of the only people not from New York to become a legend in New York as a basketball player. One of the few. Came to New York and just did crazy things. And so I did a story about him. He's still out there going on playgrounds, busting people up, throwing the ball through people's legs, making them fall down. I do think, though, that the competition aspect of playground basketball is really, it seems to be gone, unfortunately. I think that the last playground moment nationally was when the NBA had the lockout or whatever, and guys were just barnstorming around. And your man Kevin Durant went to the Rucker and had that phenomenal game. And the ending scene, please Google Kevin Durant Rucker Park and watch him go nuts. The thing that made it special was at the end of the game, so the neighborhood is all there and they're going crazy. And after he hits the last ridiculous bucket, just a whole bunch of regular people and kids come out and surround KD, and they get to touch their heroes. That's something that doesn't happen in the NBA behind the ropes and all that kind of stuff. And so I really respect him. Kobe went to the Rucker to make it a point. I'm going to the Rucker, So, but I can't, and this is no disrespect. It's just the culture of it has changed so much. Nowadays, they're all going to play with Chris Brickley in Manhattan in the private run. At his gym over there. And I love what Chris is doing. And who wouldn't, if you're a pro, of course I want to do that. They're not going uptown to play anymore. Yeah. Rest in peace to Greg Marius, by the way, who ran the Rucker tournament, Entertainers Basketball Classic, for 25 plus years. Great guy, passed away too soon. So I think that young people also, they don't, and this goes for all sports, they don't just go outside and play.
Yeah.
They might go to the Y, and the real hoopers will go to the Y and have pickup games, but so much of it is over organized. I have a son who plays Division I basketball, and when he was home in COVID this summer, him and his high school buddies, they went out and had sandlot baseball games. They had 7-game series and home and away, and umpires and not organized by anyone but themselves, just young people having fun. So that's the thing that we're missing. I think that a lot of kids now, they know how to do a step back, but they don't know how to play basketball at a young age because they just don't play enough games. You're always working out. I'm doing drills. I'm getting my shots up. Man, we got to play. So, I don't want to be the old guy on his porch yelling, get off my playground. And everything, things change. The skill level of today's players is phenomenal.
No doubt.
But a little bit of the authenticity and the joy has been sucked out of it. And also, sort of NBA guys used to feel that they had to prove themselves, that there was a time where if you didn't go to the Rucker and do your thing, you didn't really get your full measure of credibility because, Kobe did it, KD did it. So, because there were real players up there, you had to succeed in a different way. You have to be a little bit tougher to get it outside, shout to my man Will Strickland for this saying, concrete is bad for my knees. Concrete is good for your blankety blank heart. So that's my playground rant. There's a lot of terrific young players out, and AAU is all good. We got it's all good, but the more you can play just for the love of playing, get your butt outside. And if I see you, I'm gonna get you.
I mean, those guys, those guys, watch out, full court 21 for sure. if he wanders up to you and wants to play full court 21, go the other way. But I think that too, what you're talking about there is the creativity that you get, and there's an egalitarian aspect of the playground basketball that maybe that's, and I think that, gosh, I don't even know what the word is, but just like homegrownness of those nicknames, right? It's just, it frees you up. There's no pressure or anything like that. You know, it's not on Instagram necessarily.
You don't earn it off hype.
Right.
You know, you don't earn it off highlights. You know, I mean, I like watching young kids on the internet do their thing, but you know, everybody makes every shot on a highlight.
Yeah.
You know, and so, and you know, it's funny because that, you know, like the and one style and the and one mixtape and all that kind of stuff came out of the Rutgers. So, and they live for highlights out there. But you know, this internet, working out on the internet and editing it out and stuff like it's a different culture now.
Yeah.
I feel it's a little less authentic.
Yeah.
And you have to earn a nickname on the playground. By the way, Bobito is the king of nicknames and was an announcer at the Rutgers.
Yes.
Bobito is the one who gave Lance the name Born Ready.
He needs awesome. Great nickname, by the way. He needs his own site. Just all these guys. He should be a nickname consultant for the NBA. Like, they need to hire him immediately.
100%. I mean, it always bothered me that they nickname like Anthony Davis, calling him the Brow.
Oh, I know.
What are you doing?
That's whack.
Yeah.
Like, you pick an embarrassing feature of somebody, like, no, that's whack. That's something that like corny sports writers.
You don't make fun of him. I know. Yeah. I want Honey Dip. Wow. How is Honey Dip not come back? Somebody else needs that one. I read that and I was like, what? That's amazing.
You know,
the rabbit should
start a movement.
Exactly. The rabbit somebody should be the rabbit right now. What are we doing?
Man, yeah. Well, we already got De'Aaron Fox, so he's a fox, and Fox
perfect. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. That would be perfect. If you had one guy named the Rabbit and the Fox, you could get him in the matchup. The NBA would love that.
Is there any real nickname in the NBA right now?
I don't know. I don't know. King James is so he's so at least still notable. The beard.
Right, the beard.
But that's so obvious.
I know.
Creativity with that.
Yeah.
The beard.
Yeah. It's just naming an aspect of him too. Everybody's just
liked when KD. I was gonna say I liked when people tried to nickname KD the Slim Reaper, but I liked that he didn't like it. Like, you know, like he had a nickname that was like scary, but like he didn't want to go by that, you know, or
Tarantula.
So I think
they tried to do Tarantula.
Or Tarantula, right. Or Kawhi having like the Kingslayer, right? But not, not totally. Good. I don't know.
Him with the claw, with those big mitts of his. That's all right. That's all right. Just because he's.
I think you're right.
They used to call Dr. J the Claw.
Did he?
Uptown.
Okay. See,
yeah, they did.
That'd be all right.
Yeah, you know what? So we need to get this to somehow we need to get this into the TNT inside the NBA ecosystem.
This should be a whole bit for them, right?
Yeah, Kenny Smith knows what time it is. Like,
you're right.
Jet.
Yep, you're right. The Jet. Also, great nickname. That's solid. Yeah.
We need to get that. So, going back to the book, coach's player Michael Jackson, his point guard for his championship team, a very humble guy, very accomplished guy, unbeknownst to me and almost everyone else, started that show inside the NBA on TNT. Oh yeah. He still has connects up there. So I'm gonna try and get a word to Michael. You get a word to Kenny. Like, yo, y'all need to start handing out some nicknames
for sure. Yeah. Hey, it could make for great arguments too. They love arguing, man. When they start handing these out to players and they hate them, they'll be like, "Wait, what? You hate that?"
Yes. Yeah. That seems like a Shaq segment, right? Like he just smashes some nicknames on people. That'd be great.
Indeed. Although I don't think Donovan is gonna accept it.
No, definitely not. Yeah. Hey, before we move on, so I want to talk a little Georgetown next, but I want to shout out Sametta Wallace Jackson. You got a great part in here and about coaches' own education. I mean, first, I feel like he was an educator. Like, he's a coach, but he really saw himself as a teacher, and he was. And she had such an impact on his life. It's such a great story. People got to read the book and just learn about what he had to go through, because he was a supremely intelligent human being, but he had to jump through strange hoops. Just the way the system was set up, almost against him succeeding on an educational level, and he was able to overcome that with the help of teachers and people in his life. His parents were amazing. The way you start the book out with them too, they're two incredible people as well.
Yeah, man. I mean, the system was called segregation. That's what the system was called. It was called
Thank you for naming it. You're right.
know?
Yeah, no
So,
doubt.
Yeah.
No doubt.
And I mean, Coach John Thompson, one of the most intelligent people to come across the American public in our history, was considered to be "quote unquote" retarded by his elementary school teachers.
Almost
he had a
can't
reading
say it, you know.
disability. And in the 5th grade, he couldn't read. And he almost, we came this close to not knowing who John Thompson was. He could have just been cast aside, but he had a black woman who taught him Sametta Wallace Jackson and said in the 6th grade, "Oh, you're not stupid. You just can't read. You need some help." And, you know, that stuck with him. And so he would never overlook anyone's intelligence. And a lot of people criticize him for bringing these players to Georgetown. It still angers me how they were viewed as undeserving of being there. Just because they were black and athletes, when he would look deeper and see the intelligent people as someone did to him. You know, if someone hadn't said, "Oh, you're not stupid, you just can't read," and did not judge the book by its black cover, then we would never have known who John Thompson was. We would have been deprived of everything that he gave us. So, you know, an amazing part of his story.
And I love too in that part of his life, he talks about being held back and how that wasn't something he wanted, but something he needed. And then how he's used that as a lesson when coaching students, you know, athletes that, you know, oftentimes they would have lessons that they didn't want, but really needed, you know.
And he also says, he's very clear in his book where he says, not all of my players love me. Some of them hope that they never see me again. And I feel the same way about some of them.
That's right.
But he says sometimes when you're in a teaching role, you have to do things that people don't like, you know. And he said, I didn't like it when they held me back, but I dealt with it. And it was better for me. Yeah. So he understands that.
Yeah, and that seemed to really translate into, you know, his ethos of not serving as the master, not exploiting his student athletes for their athletic prowess, but really holding them to their commitments of academic achievement as well, even though, you know, maybe they were more focused or came wanting to pursue professional basketball as a singular goal.
He was so far ahead of his time with that, making sure his kids graduated. In the 70s and the 80s, man, most of these schools didn't care. You come as long as you're eligible and play ball. And then when your eligibility is up, you know, see you later.
Yeah. That's right. End of transaction. Absolutely.
End of transaction. Emphasis on the transaction. Good word, you know. But he was ahead of his time with that. Now all of these schools are making sure that people graduate. The NCAA is making sure they graduate. So, but John Thompson really cared about it, and he cared about it first.
Yeah, I think that's that. I've noticed this with some of the older coaches too that we've been looking back on the way that they had to come up to in the different levels and maybe see, you know, go through different struggles. I don't know if that's changed or if it's just the different pressures that the coaches have on them today, but they've just seemed to have this different focus. I mean, him working as a counselor, he had so many different jobs too that he was able to bring just this like such a well-rounded life experience to the coaching aspect of it. It wasn't just basketball for him. It was about life. It was like he would get on, you know, follow a guy to the bus, and just like he knew that there was more to life, and he wanted to make sure his players, you know, understood that. There's this, you got the story about at practice him putting some things into their water bottles to make a point. I mean, just like his not understanding of like human nature is just next level. I mean, that's such a cool thing for a coach to have, and I think you do a good job of exemplifying that in him.
Thank you. I mean, I hope that other coaches read it and understand that having that type of understanding and ability, it's a skill that they have to develop. I think most coaches want to care about educating their kids. I think most coaches want to connect with their children and really help them to be better people, but winning gets in the way, you know, and also it's something that they may not always be good at. They have to work at that to become good at it. So I hope that some coaches are inspired to increase their capabilities in that area, because I have seen a lot of coaches. You know, I have 2 kids who play basketball. My daughter's, you know, going to play college basketball too. I've interviewed a lot of coaches, and I think that too many of them don't have that piece of really what should be the primary qualification for coaching. So hopefully they'll read it and say, "Hey, let me up my game in this." They
respect. Should. I mean, if you're a coach, you should definitely read this book, because you can get a lot from just his approach to the game. And again, his willingness to get involved, that kind of no fear attitude of getting involved on different levels with the player's life. Because it can be a little intimidating as a coach to delve into other aspects of a kid's life rather than just what's in front of you, to like go out there and reach out to where they're at in the community, or, talk to Rayful or whoever, understanding like, hey, it's not just about the guy that shows up in the gym. This guy's got a whole other life, and I want to have an impact on that as well.
Yeah, it takes courage, and you have to sacrifice it. And Coach knew that if he left to his own devices, he would do what would help him win. Yeah. So he set up safeguards to protect him from his own competitive instincts. Yeah. It's tough. Are you going to make a decision that could cost you a game but is better for the kid? That's the question that coaches have to answer. And we all know what the answer should be, and we all know what it too often is. So, that's a big theme in this book.
Yeah. Aaron, you mentioned, like the coach's trajectory and like the, level of scrutiny that he constantly faced, and then the additions of social responsibility that he had as a black coach. And, Jesse, I wanted to ask you this, throughout the book, there's this theme that black coaches will never be free until they're free to make mistakes. And I wondered, when you were talking to the coach, did he feel more optimistic about the possibilities or perspectives for black coaches, or did he feel like it was kind of the same level of scrutiny that he was experiencing in the 80s?
He did not feel optimistic because of the evidence, because the state for black coaches in college basketball has regressed. There are no black coaches with real and significant influence as he had, and John Chaney and Nolan Richardson and George Raveling. And I don't think it's for lack of ability. It's a number of reasons. Part of it is the way basketball has changed. There's more of a win now mentality. Part of it is the way opportunities are handed out. Black coaches in college football have never really gotten an opportunity. And no black college football coaches won a championship. We know what's going on in the NFL. The NBA is up and down. So, he was not optimistic. He kept saying, hey, man, we've gone backwards. What are we going to do about this? Somebody asked me recently, who do you think is the next John Thompson? And then a wise person that was involved with the conversation said, well, maybe it's these folks on the grassroots level. Maybe the next John Thompson, there's a lot of John Thompsons really working in the community with kids who we might not ever hear of them. And I really like that answer. So while Coach was not optimistic about at the highest levels of college basketball, and if we look out there, if I had to ask you who's the next John Thompson, it would be tough to say. Someone who stands for something more than winning, but still does win. Because winning is the prerequisite for getting any attention or having any influence. But I do think that there are thousands of John Thompsons, white and black, across the country who are consciously or not following his model of working for kids, and they're teachers, and they're really preparing people for life through basketball. And I think that that's one of his biggest legacies.
I'll tell you what, two guys I like right now. We're talking about Florida State this Friday, and Leonard Hamilton, I think, has done an awesome job at Florida State and doesn't get enough credit down there for what he's done. And then I picked Shaka Smart and Texas in the Final Four this year, so hoping for big things from them too. Always liked him as a coach. I think he's just the way he approaches the game and the way that his teams play is so much fun to watch. But I want to talk a little bit Georgetown. So I actually almost spit some water through my nose when I was listening to the Ewing and the briefcase story that you had in there about the Samsonite briefcase. I was driving down the road and having my coffee in the morning, I think it was, and about lost it. So that was so great. But what did Patrick Ewing mean to coach, and how did he talk about him? Because it just seemed like to me, reading and listening to you, that he just had such reverence for this guy, and another guy who doesn't get enough credit as a coach either, because he's an incredible coach as well.
He meant everything to Coach Thompson, and one of the biggest reasons is because Patrick Ewing was the first top player to choose to play for a black coach. When there was a perception that, oh no, you got to go to one of these Indianas or North Carolinas. And, Coach Thompson loved the Carolina coach, Dean Smith. He loved Bobby Knight, which is a whole nother thing. Yeah. But Patrick Ewing was not afraid to play for a black coach, and that made it okay for other top players to do that. And so that, I think, is where it began. And then Patrick Ewing is just a good person and intelligent. He said that Patrick Ewing had the most leverage over him of any player he ever had and used it the least. And Coach Thompson tried to get him to go pro. He's like, I don't want you to stay because if you get hurt, I'm going to feel terrible. And Patrick was like, no, I got to come back. I'm not going to leave you without a center. And so it just goes on and on and on. He was definitely like a son to him, to the point where when Georgetown fired his biological son, JT3, Coach Thompson encouraged Patrick Ewing to apply for the job. So that relationship, I witnessed that relationship on many occasions. I witnessed them interacting with each other, and it was a beautiful thing to see.
Just thinking about the pressure that he felt. How did the pressure but then getting Patrick help him to shape what Georgetown basketball was? Because I think that it's so weird when we think about these teams that have become so iconic, and these Georgetown teams were just incredibly iconic. It seems like it's tied to the coach, and I was just curious if he realized like he was cultivating a certain type of basketball or a certain image for himself and the team, or what he wanted to accomplish with Georgetown. Because it was just, thinking back, it just is so strange that it doesn't get more credit. It almost seems like he still looms over the program, even though they've been tremendously successful even since he's left. And as an Indiana fan, same thing. I can say the same thing. Bob Knight, still, the specter's still there. It's been 20 years, and it just is kind of different. I don't know if it's just the way that college basketball is organized now, or if those guys are just so legendary that it's just hard to escape the shadow. But I'm curious if he had kind of a perspective on that.
I think he knew it, although he didn't talk about it a lot. I mean, we would go to work and walk past his statue in the hallway of the John R. Thompson Athletic Center. And as big as Coach Thompson was in real life, the statue was bigger. Yeah. So he knew it and he understood it, and he did it on purpose. He wanted to succeed. He stood for something. And he's the only coach who is extremely successful at winning, but is known primarily for things other than winning. And is what makes him unique. I can't think of any other coach, as many great coaches and great people as have come across college basketball, who we could say the same thing about. So he knew it. And yes, part of the iconic nature of his program was Coach Thompson himself, but he never would have been successful, and we would not be talking about him now if he had not won. And he knew that he had to win in order to be heard. So it was the combination of the two that made it successful. And then that comes with the players, and so at the end of the book, he said something very poignant where he said, I really want to thank all my players for, giving me the privilege of coaching you. So he really gave credit where credit was due.
That's awesome. Well, I wanted to hit Iverson too, because that kind of takes us towards the end of his career. But again, it's just an example of coach being willing to step out in a way, and that internal confidence in himself that he could take a player who at the time was perceived to have problems just based on what was in the media, but he seemed to be able to cut through that again. And, obviously he became tremendously successful, maybe even more known now than coach. Just his legacy seems to still be kind of growing and continuing to influence the larger culture. So kind of crazy the way that, again, one of those players that might not have been had it not been for coach.
Yeah, Coach realized later on, I needed to take people like Allen, because that was the kind of challenge that invigorated me. I needed to push against the system. Allen Iverson was almost railroaded into oblivion. If coach hadn't taken him, we wouldn't have known who he was. He was wrongly convicted, and his conviction was later tossed out for lack of evidence. And coach saw an injustice and wanted to help address that. He knew he was a good player, but he didn't know he was one of the greatest little people that ever played a game of basketball. And I believed him. He said it over and over, and I really believe him. I didn't know he was that good. He wanted to help somebody. He wanted to help his mom. Really, he was like, I don't think it's going to work. And then his, coach says in the book that Ann Iverson told everyone else to leave the room and said, Coach, please, if you don't take my son, they're going to kill him. And that's when Coach Thompson decided to do it. He also said that after that, he had a conversation with Allen, and Allen says he had never heard someone use the word MFer more than he had in that first conversation with Coach Thompson. So, it's an incredible pairing of those two people. And I'll leave it for readers to sort of dig into that chapter. Iverson is the only person who gets his own chapter, only player who gets his own chapter in Coach Thompson's book. And Coach was a little worried. He asked me, to your earlier point about Patrick, he said, do I give Patrick enough time in the book? Because Allen got his own chapter, but Patrick doesn't. And we had to assure him, well, Patrick, you talk about throughout, and you give him credit, But it was really special, and they might seem like an odd couple because Allen is, in his appearance, and his tattoos and everything and his off the court problems. And that might seem to go counter to John Thompson's image. But John Thompson was someone who didn't live his life according to what other people thought he should be.
Definitely.
And Coach Thompson expressed it his way, and he loved the fact that Allen expressed it his way. And he loved that boy. And it was very apparent in talking about him, and I think it really comes through in the book too.
I love that he was able to kind of redefine Coach a little bit too, because he'd always been seen as kind of a big man's, Mutombo, Mourning, Ewing, and then all of a sudden here comes this little point, rocket-fueled point guard who's just blazing all over the court and just an unbelievable player. I got to watch him one time live, and the speed that he had, the tenacity that he played with was just so much fun. Just like everything that I would have wanted to be in a basketball player. If I could have made myself into a basketball player, would have been Iverson.
Yeah, he was acutely aware of the fact that everybody said he was a quote-unquote big man coach, and that bothered him. So he liked.
I bet, because he had all these other guys, right? Michael Jackson, and all, it's weird reading the book where I'm like, yeah, why did everybody think that? Because he had all these incredible point guards. Fred Brown was in there, and all these fun guys.
He really did. He sent a lot of guys to the pros at the guard position. So,
no doubt.
Jesse, I was wondering, earlier you were talking about how Coach Thompson, is this real balance of college competitiveness, but then also, too, this real authentic investment in his athletes. He describes himself as a second-rate educator. And, in a lot of ways, college basketball, right, is kind of the best and worst of sport, right? You see these aspects of exploitation, which Coach Thompson himself talks about, and how his understanding of that dynamic in college sports has changed over times. But then also, too, in college basketball, we see these opportunities for social change, like his protest of Proposition 42, or his creation of the Black Coaches Association. And so I guess, you've obviously covered college basketball for a long time. You talked about your time at Yale where you watched a lot of great basketball. I wondered, how did your understanding of college basketball either get supported or changed based on your time with Coach Thompson?
I had a greater understanding of everything that goes into it other than just what's on the court and how difficult it is to succeed. And when I say succeed, primarily help these young men become what they're supposed to be and also to win games. The two things are really sort of diametrically opposed, and in today's environment, and part of this comes from the book and part of it comes from, my children's experiences, but there's this idea that you have to give yourself over entirely to basketball in order to make it, to go D1. That's the thing now. Yeah, I want to be D1. I want to be D1, let alone go to the NBA. So it's and we have this myth about, you know, this, not myth is the wrong word, you know, this word, the grind. Man, I saw somebody on the internet saying that I will guarantee you will play Division I basketball if you train for 6 hours a day. You should not train for 6 hours a day. And our young people are having an unhealthy balance in their lives. And it's this obsession with basketball is costing them real valuable things in their lives. They're having to give up too much. And I don't think that it's probably necessary to give up that much, but everyone's like, well, I have to work harder than the next guy. And Coach Thompson was all about that. You know, he recognized that and refused to give into that and would take time out of practice just to talk about current events.
Yeah.
You know, he would sit him down on the bench, blow the whistle, sit him down on the bench and talk for an hour, have a discussion, basically have a seminar about something that had nothing to do with basketball. That's out of your practice time.
Yeah.
So I think that what I've recognized now from working on this book is that I think the balance is off with basketball. I mean, these young people in college, at the top levels of college basketball, are putting 35, 40 hours a week into this sport. And I know they love it. And, you know, I don't blame them for it. And it's the way the system is set up, but maybe we should dial it back. You know, who's willing to take that step? But then if you dial it back and you lose, then you get fired. So I think the book and working with Coach and talking to him really made me realize how unique he was, how brave he was to not just place all the emphasis on winning, and how something is really missing in our basketball culture in the United States. It's an overemphasis on basketball. And I love the game of basketball.
Right,
I've overemphasized it in my own life. It was the main source of friction in my marriage for like the first 7 years. Yeah, honey, I'm going to the store. And then I come back 2 hours later and I'm sweating.
Fresh and sweat, right? Yeah.
You know, so I get it. But, you know, we have to sort of recalibrate, I think. And that's the thing that the book made me realize.
I love that. Well, hey, I know I want to be cognizant of your time. I'm sure your wife probably looking for you right now. Now that we've taken up that hour of your time right now.
Talking about basketball.
I know, but I got one more question for you here. I want to make sure that people get out and read this book first of all, and just thank you for keeping Coach's story alive for future generations. I want to hear first what you're up to, and then I'll hit my final question. So, what do you got going on now, or where can people read you besides the book, and then any upcoming projects you might have?
Okay, cool, man. So I'm at theundefeated.com. That's ESPN's platform dealing with race, sports, and culture. You can read me and all of my tremendously talented colleagues over there. You can see The Undefeated on ESPN. We got a ton of stuff, shows and stuff on Black History Month. We're on Hulu. I also am the producer of a documentary that has nothing to do with sports. It is called The March on Washington, Keepers of the Dream, connecting the March on Washington of 1963 to now. That premieres this week on the National Geographic Channel, who is our corporate cousin. It's co-produced by The Undefeated. And also you can see that at any time on Hulu, starting this Thursday. And then other than that, man, just really trying to write more stories. The things that I like to write about involve sports, but transcend sports and have an importance that is bigger than sports. And when I first met Coach Thompson, one of the very first things he said to me was, I don't want to write a book that's about basketball. It's about other things that are bigger than basketball. And I said, that's great, Coach, because neither do I. So I'd like to get back to that. And you know, really, I've been inspired by working with Coach on his autobiography. I've learned a lot, and I like to apply that inspiration and those lessons to writing more stories that help explain the world we live in and help us get to a better place and help people. And then occasionally write about James Harden flopping and go beat some guy in the internet.
That's right. Get some buckets. So you're going to get cold threes later with Josh. You're taking him out. Or full court 21.
Cold threes, baby. That's a great name.
Yeah.
Cold threes is a great name.
Exactly. Full court 21, you're definitely taking him out. I want to watch him really struggle on that one. All right, Jesse. Thanks so much for your time.
Out for the record, Aaron, you're getting took out too.
I'm not going to say that. No, I mentality right here.
Okay. Keep thinking that, man. Appreciate you guys. Thanks so much for your time, Jesse. And with Coach Thompson's book. Thank you.
Love it.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to the 199 podcast. For more information, check out the blog at 199.com under HVS. And while you're there, do yourself a favor and pick up some retro college shorts. Till next time.
Earn Varial. I like to recite it sometimes.
I came as a shadow. I stand now a light. The depth of my darkness transfigures your night.
My soul is a nocturne, each note is a star. The light will not blind you, so look where you are. The radiance is soothing, there's warmth in the light.
I came as a shadow to dazzle your night.
I always identified with that shadow.